Breaking news. Democrats have taken a brief pause from crying over illegal aliens to show their full support to the real underdog, Stephen Colbert. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the show on YouTube at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. The show starts now.
So I want to tell you why the cancellation of Stephen Colbert's show matters so much. We are on the precipice of entering a censorship state in which Donald Trump is using the powers of the federal government in order to erase criticism from the airwaves. What's happening at CBS right now is bone-chilling. CBS's parent company, Paramount, is trying to get a merger approved, and they need that merger to be approved by the Trump administration. And so in a variety of different ways, Paramount is providing monetary and political favors to Donald Trump. First, they settled a totally bogus lawsuit that they would have won in a walk in court that was filed against them by Trump. They essentially just paid him $16 million personally. Then Paramount went to 60 Minutes, their flagship news program, and told them to stop criticizing Donald Trump so much. Why? Because they need this merger approved. And then finally, they have now canceled Stephen Colbert's show, knowing that Stephen Colbert was a nightly thorn in the side of Donald Trump. This is all clearly designed to get their merger approved so that their millionaire and billionaire owners and investors who are already filthy rich can become even more filthy rich. This is what happens when these massive corporations control the flow of information at the same time that you have an administration that is shameless about using the official powers given to them by the Constitution and by statute in order to compel political loyalty from the owners of those media companies. This is a really, really dangerous moment. Stephen Colbert didn't get thrown off the air because he wasn't doing well. He was the highest rated show on TV in late night. He was canceled, very likely, because Paramount and its owners are trying to get rich off of this merger, and Donald Trump has made it clear to them and everybody else in the media space that if you want any favors from me, then you have to silence my critics on your platforms.
I was going to have the producers cut that down because it's so stupid and hard to listen to, but alas, I did have to give you the full depth and breadth of that moronic idiocy. Senator Chris Murphy and many others like him, who perhaps all share the same brain cell or perhaps drink the same bathwater, really want you to believe the cancellation of The Late Show hosted by Stephen Colbert will end nearly a year from now because President Trump said so and because Colbert, whose show is reportedly 40 million in the hole, makes fun of Trump. This is all part of the censorship complex, like during COVID or the Hunter Biden laptop. Oh, wait, never mind, right? But you just have to laugh when rich Hollywood elites think that they're so brave and noble standing up for the underdogs like Colbert and equate nobody watching their crap content to being silenced. What these showbiz overhyped elites cannot wrap their little heads around is that people in middle America and here in the South don't want to listen to them make fun of us, who we voted for everything we believe in, etc. on a nightly basis, especially when they aren't even remotely funny doing it. The show is hemorrhaging viewers and ratings because, in case these hacks haven't caught on yet, everyday American viewers are sick and tired of these overpaid, unfunny show hosts making fun of the better part of America and then passing it off as entertainment. So yeah, I guess the cancellation in that regard is a bit political, as in we're sick of their one-sided, unfunny political drivel. Though, as I said more accurately, the failing show is getting canceled for financial reasons, with some insiders suggesting while it's losing more than $40 million a year, the show sustained a budget of over $100 million per season. So yeah, the math ain't mathin'. I'd also point out that there was some magical conspiracy by the Trump administration to shut down shows that weren't favorable or even fair to him. 90 to 95% of programming would be on the chopping block, and it's kind of hard to allege Trump made the decree for The Late Show to be canceled, but give it 10 more months on air. So unless Trump is like Santa Claus and is going into millions of homes each night and shutting off televisions just as The Late Show goes on air, you're going to have a real hard time blaming Trump for yet another leftist flop. Joining me now is Republican strategist Luke Ball. All right, Luke, they're really crying over Stephen Colbert. You know, he is now the martyr for the whole movement. You know, him being critical of Donald Trump, that's what got him kicked off the air. But in 10 months, they're going to give him 10 more months. And then Trump administration is going to demand that that show go off air. What's your take on the latest victim of the leftist industrial complex?
I found out Stephen Colbert still had a show when I heard his show was getting canceled. The guy's been irrelevant for an extended period of time. And any time something happens to these left-wing media lunatics that is in it slightly negative, they're going to rush to Donald Trump and try to blame him and say that it's cancel culture. They're going to try to say that he is the one who has his thumb on the scale of all of these media outlets. But you just put it perfectly. If he had control of all of this, he would have shut this down in his first term. It's why it's so ridiculous when you hear the left-wing lunatics say, we have no kings. Yeah, we don't have any kings. We're not supposed to have a king. If Donald Trump were the king, you would have been jailed a long time ago. Your media outlets would have been shut down and you would have been silenced. I think it all comes back to this. We're finally starting to hold the media accountable for the things that they say, because far too long, you've had media outlets in the pocket of the Democrat Party completely. And they have, the Democrats have leaned on that as a way to try to get their message out for free. At some point, it has to be counted as an in-kind contribution to these campaigns because they contribute so much to the Democrats. And now that that power is being pulled away because viewership is dropping and budgets are getting slashed, they don't want to blame themselves and look within. They want to look without and try to blame Donald Trump.
Yeah, again, this to me is just a major oversight by the Democrat Party and the leftist media, who, as you mentioned, are basically one and the same at this point and probably have been for decades, although more noticeably probably in the last 10 years, of course. But it's like people aren't voting for the Democrat Party because they're woke and stupid and they're disingenuous and they're phony. People are also not watching leftist broadcasts and then late night shows that are leftist broadcasts. They're not watching those either. And it's not because Donald Trump said not to watch. It's because people don't want to watch it. And it's the same thing with these award shows as well. People aren't watching the Grammys. They're not watching the Oscars or the Golden Globes like they once did because those programs and that programming is so deeply disconnected from your everyday American. People just don't want to watch it and they don't want to be lectured about politics from rich Hollywood elites. And I love that Stephen Colbert, of course, it's like they're silencing him. He's such a victim. You know, that's what they really consider censorship. I don't believe any of them ever had a problem with the censorship of conservatives on social media platforms over COVID, the Hunter Biden laptop, and everything else we learned in the Twitter files. They never had a problem with that. But now they care that Stephen Colbert doesn't have a show in 10 months? And that's censorship.
He's their king, he's their pope, and now he's getting dethroned and they're getting rattled to their core. And watching these shows used to be fun, right? You used to tune into the award shows and you'd see Chris Farley do a cartwheel across the stage and everyone would have a great time. We'd hand out awards, that sort of thing. They started to politicize it further and further, started getting it drugged to the left. And by and large, the viewership in these audiences, they just want to tune out the news in the rest of the day. I don't go home at night and turn on the news because I deal with it all day long. Now, if I were doing something else and wanted to go home and turn on the news, I would. But sometimes I just want to decompress. I want to go and watch my television show without having a woke agenda forced down my throat or having to worry about whether or not there's equal representation of minorities in that particular episode of the television show. Like, we just want to decompress. We want to relax and we want to have fun. And this just started becoming that very centralized wing of the Democrat Party where you went to just get angry at Donald Trump. That's not a great way to end your day. And I don't think that there's viewership there. I think maybe for a handful of people who would normally just go turn on MSNBC and watch Rachel Maddow at night, that might appeal to them. They might just leave the channel on as it goes to that. But America has vastly changed. America has dramatically changed. And even with respect to the parties, you know, the Democrats used to be the party of the working man and woman. But now the Republicans have taken that mantle and it has shifted. You see that in our politics. You see that in our culture. You see it over over in Hollywood, who's the kingmaker of the Democratic Party right now? I guess George Clooney, because he convinced him to dethrone Joe Biden in this last election. Hollywood is the political capital of the Democrat Party. Now, Washington, D.C. is Hollywood for ugly people, and that's why I'm here. But I believe that when you look at the makeup of the Democrat Party and you look at the makeup of the Republican Party, it's vastly different than 10 years ago, and it also speaks to who's viewing what in the mainstream media today.
And I just don't think he's funny. I think that I mean, maybe 15 years ago or so, people like that were funny. They sprinkled in a little politics and it was maybe funny to a certain group, or you just heard some of the political things and you got over it. And it wasn't solely political watching late night television. Now it's solely political. And these people are also not funny. The jokes are not funny. And then I'd also point out that a lot of these late night shows, they had to go on a hiatus when their writers were on strike because they couldn't even come up with this unfunny crap on their own. So that's even worse.
Never noticed, by the way, that they went offline. You know, honestly, I heard that there was a writer's strike going on. My life was not impacted in the slightest. No. I just went about my normal everyday life, and I didn't have to lean on late night news to give me any sort of comedic relief or any sort of newsworthiness or value throughout the day, because ultimately they don't matter. And that's the big thing they're concerned about. Their relevancy has drastically shifted. This is not Johnny Carson any longer. This is Stephen Colbert, who has a fraction of the viewership that late night television used to have, with a multitude of competitors. Maybe give us something fun. Haul out like an ostrich to come across stage and bring out the live animals like they used to do. Don't shove down my throat some woke agenda that happened on Capitol Hill or some latest thing that happened in Hollywood with the progressive lefts or whatever Mamdani or AOC is up to. Give me some comedic relief that can appeal to a wide variety of audiences, because when you slim down the audience that you're speaking to such a small fraction in the progressive left, you are going to lose money, tons of money. The only people that can prop you up if you have like a 501c3 or a campaign and a super PAC are the large mega donors who are vastly interested in the progression of the progressive left. But the minority of people that do that don't make up the majority of viewers for these networks.
Yeah, it's just not funny, too. I want to go on to something else now. I don't think any of us are shocked by DNI Tulsi Gabbard saying that there was this, obviously the Russia hoax was a hoax and it actually goes deeper than we probably knew. I don't think that this is like a breaking revelation. I think most of us knew that there was something about this, but I'm kind of in the camp of a lot of other folks that I see on social media that this is all great that they're bringing it up. But unless you're going to start arresting people, making these big proclamations of these big, well, we found this, we found that. Okay, but like, is anybody going to get arrested for it? Will anybody actually be prosecuted for it? I know they're going to investigate, and like all that's great, but it feels like when the Republicans conduct something like this, it never really ends up anywhere. There's plenty of issues that we've had with weaponization, but to my knowledge, nobody's ever had to be called to the carpet for it. I mean, you had the Biden family influence peddling, we got the auto pen, Joe Biden's cognitive decline. It's a great talking point, and this is going to be a great talking point too, but I don't know, Luke. I don't think anybody's actually going to, face any real consequences.
Well, Tommy, I'm really glad you brought up the influence peddling with the Biden family first before we get to the Russia hoax, because I was furious at the Republican Party that they strung us along for years and said, we are getting evidence, we're getting piece by piece, we're going to put it all together. And you know where it ended up coming all together? In a book that the head of the committee took and just was peddling to make book sales. We didn't actually do anything with that information. Nothing ever came of it. You imagine how frustrated Donald Trump must be that every time he gets into power, the last couple of times that he's gotten to a position where he's like actually getting traction, the left comes out with some sort of wackadoodly conspiracy theory that they're trying to drag him into and drag him further behind in his progress. In the first term, it was the Russia collusion hoax, and then it was the Ukraine impeachment and the Mueller investigation in tandem with the Russia hoax, and it just went on and on and on. But the fact that the DNC and Hillary Clinton could pay for a Steele dossier that was used to get a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign to kick off the Russia collusion hoax, and that we still have members of Congress that are out there peddling this lie is just absolutely flooring to me. You had Adam Schiff, who Donald Trump is now saying I'm going to hold to account, out there for years, saying that I have actual evidence of Russia collusion between Donald Trump and the Russia between the Donald Trump campaign and the state of Russia, the nation of Russia, and it never came to fruition. He never presented that evidence because none of that evidence ever existed. And yet many Democrats still take this mantle and shove it down our throats. And then when Republicans get into power, you're right, they make great charts, and I think that chart's fantastic, and I love that we get to track how everything kind of conspired. But what are we going to do about it? Let's get it out of Canva and get it into the courts. Let's actually make some impact here and ensure that we hold these people accountable because, and I cannot stress this enough, if we don't do anything about it, they will do it again.
Yeah, well, we know that. They've done everything to that man. He survived 2 assassination attempts, too, just in case there wasn't enough that was heaped on the guy. And he's just winning for the American people, which really bothers them. But speaking of so-called Republicans, and they're saying that this is not amnesty, okay? They're calling it dignity, because now dignity and amnesty, nothing makes me more frustrated that when you have Republicans that are pushing for amnesty or they're pushing for some kind of a cutout or a caveat for illegal aliens that they believe or their donors believe they need for the cheap labor. But you've got Maria Salazar, okay? She's been on a tirade with this Dignity Act. This is a rather long clip, but we've cut it down. And this is amnesty by another name called dignity. Take a look at this.
President Trump, sir, the same God who saved you from death in Pennsylvania 1 year ago and who put you back in the Oval Office against all odds is the same God Almighty who millions and millions are begging to for some type of dignity, not amnesty. Sir, I believe that you could be for immigration what Lincoln was for slavery and Reagan was for communism. You are a businessman who understands our economy needs a reliable working force in areas where other Americans don't participate. Some of the most shameful moments in our past as a country relates to how we have treated immigrants who are not criminals. And we are in one of those moments. If we get this wrong, future generations will pay the price in shame. But if we get it right, the United States will continue to lead in liberty, and you will have been the commander-in-chief. It's in your hands, Mr. President. May the Lord guide you.
There's so many things wrong with that really infuriate me, and the fact that this person is passing themselves off as conservative-minded or appealing to Donald Trump infuriates me even more. But there was a lot to unpack there. Again, she does what Democrats do, is they refer to illegal aliens as immigrants. Not the same thing. We rely on the immigrants. No, those are illegal aliens. That's different. You have to pay immigrants a fair living wage. You don't have to pay illegal aliens. And really, what she was saying there is, Donald Trump, you're a businessman. You know that we need to have people in this country to do the jobs that we don't want to do for less. And we need to have those people reliably in our country for decades and generations to come to do the things we don't want to do for less. So again, the whole dignity thing, she just undermined it with her entire little speech there. And then this whole thing of, well, spare these people, give them dignity. The Lord demands we do this. It's the same argument Democrats make. Oh, well, if you're a Christian, you must be for open borders. I mean, why is this person able to masquerade as conservative-minded? I don't know, but it's time for her to go.
Well, she's been doing this for years, and as a Bible-believing Christian, I take umbrage and am disgusted at how she's invoked the name of God just to advance her policy positions that are completely out of context. And look, God instituted 3 separate and distinct institutions: the family, the church, and the state. And in this case, the state has set up laws and rules and regulations. As Christians, according to Romans 13, we are to submit to those laws, or we are to face the wrath of the governing authorities. And so she is just completely taken the name of God and applied it to her policy position that has no relevancy whatsoever. She also made so many false equivalencies. I was writing them down. She was saying that this is our answer just like it was Abraham Lincoln's answer to slavery or Reagan's to communism. I mean, these two things are completely separate, and you are so correct in saying that they ignore the fact that they have committed a crime by coming into this country and are illegal immigrants. The Democrats and the Republicans, I guess in this case, the rhinos that are out there saying that we have to create this sort of path to amnesty and then just renaming it are ignoring all of the people that stood in line for years and years trying to go about this the legal way. By the way, the legal immigrants that are in this country are furious at the illegals for coming into our country and skipping the line and going ahead of them and not following the laws and the rules. And in addition to that, by having this sort of amnesty is a signal to the cartels, to the drug lords, to the people who are profiting off of sending individuals across our southern border that America is open for business again, that the Republican narrative and talking point is that we will accept any and everybody, and if you just get in here and stay long enough, then the laws are going to find a way to accept you. So why would people stand in line? And then the cartels start to make money off of this. I remember going down to Eagle Pass, Texas, and Yuma, Arizona, and seeing the carpet shoes that illegal immigrants would take trying to go across the desert, seeing the ramifications of these cartel members strapping drugs to the back of the immigrants coming across our border, and having these tags on their arms associated with how much money they owe to the cartel members. The United States was the greatest single financer of the cartel operations under the Biden administration because we did not do anything to stop it or deter it, and in fact, we welcomed it. And Democrats were silent on this issue of human trafficking, of drug smuggling, and child smuggling, I might add, until they realized that it affected their political bottom line. They started getting the polls back, and the polls showed that Americans actually do care about law and order and safety, and the legal immigrants that came into this country were also saying it's not fair that these illegal immigrants get to come across our border and skip the line and get treated better because they didn't follow the law. Those Democrats did not care that those folks' lives were being risked. And until it started affecting their polls, then they started running ads in swing districts saying, we're going to work across the aisle with Republicans and make sure that we secure our southern border. This president is the only one who has seriously done anything about it in my entire lifetime. And to have a so-called Republican stand out there and spew that garbage is just wholeheartedly disingenuous.
I'm also old enough to remember that one of the things that sunk Marco Rubio during his run for president against Donald Trump was his association with the Gang of Eight and the amnesty push. So the pathway to citizenship. Remember this, Republicans. We do not want amnesty. We do not want a caveat or a cutout for people who came to this country illegally and then work for cheap. That's not what we want. We want mass deportation. Send a message. There's somebody, and I go back and forth on this because I thought Kamala Harris was really dumb. She still is, obviously. I think Ketanji Brown Jackson is really dumb. There are a lot of people that I think are really dumb, but Mayor Karen Bass is up there. You know, she is really working on that Mount Rushmore of idiots. And here she is. She's been getting a lot of TV time lately, but here she is on ABC with Martha Raddatz. Take a listen.
Is there anything good you think the administration has done in these 6 months at the border?
Well, I will heap praise on the administration for the first 6 months in Los Angeles with the fires. If you ask me, is there anything that they have done good in terms of immigration? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that the viewpoint has been punitive, has been let's make it as miserable as possible so that these people don't come.
And whatever they're doing is certainly working at the border itself. We were down on that border, and it is dramatically different.
Even Martha Raddatz has to give credit where credit is due. But to me, when people say, oh, well, she's ignoring that the border is secure, well, that's assuming that Mayor Karen Bass and others want a secure border. Yes, of course she doesn't think the Trump administration is doing anything good on the border because she wants that thing wide open again. They got to have cheap labor in California. We know this. That's what she keeps talking about. They need to have future voters. They need to replace all the people that are leaving California with illegal aliens so that their population doesn't decrease rapidly. So her saying that, obviously, she wants it open. And we know this. But what do you think is the future for Mayor Karen Bass?
First of all, she has to heap praise on the federal government for the fire responses because she herself was out of the country and did hardly anything even when she came back and showed up again in her own community. The other thing here is that what you just mentioned about future voters is crucial. The Democrats are livid that Donald Trump is exporting the future voting base of the Democrat Party, the group of individuals that they counted on to be their voting base between now and kingdom come for any future elections. And this Republican amnesty thing plays directly into into their hand with all of this because they need loud shrills like that to go out and further their agenda and use words like dignity to try and influence folks in that direction. But the reality is they wanted to bring these people over. It's why they did not stop the southern border. It's why they allowed the flow of illegals to come into our country so that they could then keep them in sanctuary cities and sanctuary states and implement these policies that would allow them to get amnesty and then not only change their future voting and the percentage on their elections, but also change the electoral college and how many individuals would be able to influence presidential elections moving forward. That's what this was all about. And as I said before, they did not care about what it took to get them here, the lives associated with it, the drug epidemic that happened in the country. They only wanted their political bottom line to prosper. So I don't know what the future for Karen Bass is, frankly. We only hear about her when she messes up, and that seems to be quite often. And in California, they're just going to have to duke it out over there as to who's going to have the highest name ID to run at the top of the ballot for governor, because all of the other folks that are in the Democrat Party in California that don't want to seek a statewide election are going around and stumping in South Carolina and Iowa trying to get out ahead of the next presidential election.
Yeah, well, I think Karen Bass is done for. A lot of people in the Palisades still very pissed off at her, and for good reason. Next thing I want to talk about, I don't know about you, but my comments, no matter what I'm talking about, if I'm talking about Love Frickin' Island, I have people in my comments going, aren't you going to talk about Epstein? Aren't you going to talk about Epstein? It's like, well, yeah, but right now I'm talking about Love Island or immigration or something else. And I got to tell you, I'm getting a little annoyed with it. It's like, this must be the only thing that you talk about. If you do commentary, it must be completely centered around Epstein and whatever is there. Now, that's not saying that it's not important. That's not saying that we don't need transparency. We certainly do. I'm glad that President Trump, although, you know, he's obviously frustrated as well, is instructing Pam Bondi to release the grand jury transcripts. She said that she's doing that. I don't know how long that takes. I understand that there's some rightful criticism for the way that this was handled, and I've been very, very forthright about it. The whole binder thing, her saying that it's on her desk, giving people false hope that we were going to get answers. I understand the frustration, but my God, the people who think that this needs to be the only thing that conservative commentators talk about, to me, I'm getting a little frustrated and annoyed with it. I wonder what your take is.
The only thing I know about Love Island is that I skip over it on Peacock trying to get to The Office, so I'll leave that commentary up to you. On the Epstein case, I am also sick of talking about it, but here's the bottom line. I think Donald Trump really wanted the full truth to come out there. When I worked on the campaign with him and I traveled around the country with him, I'd never remember him mentioning the Epstein files. This was not like the central foundation of his campaign. He was talking about the economy. That was the number one top issue. He was talking about sealing the border. He was talking about stopping foreign wars, all of these different things. The Epstein thing has come up among the MAGA base, and I understand the fury there. The best I can understand from looking at it from an outside perspective, and I'm agreeing with you, actually, that first wave that Pam Bondi released, that was just disingenuous in my opinion whenever it came out that these folks didn't actually have any new information. But the most recent round of controversy, as best I can tell, is that Donald Trump got intelligence and that he looked at it and said, you know what, maybe we have a Steele dossier type of files here where there's some truth mixed in, but also there's some other things that might just be red herrings or wild goose chases or false information outright, things that might have been placed there by previous administrations. I infer that based on his comments that he said about the Russia collusion hoax and Brennan and Comey and having it passed through the hands of the former administration under Joe Biden, and that we're not entirely sure all of the documents in there are accurate. Many have pointed out, too, the Democrats have had this information for an extended period of time. The president himself has said for years he would be willing to release all of this information if he knew that there was something in there that might implicate him or any affiliation whatsoever. He wouldn't be out there saying that. He would have been saying for an extended period of time, look, we have to focus on the issues that matter, and I don't want to get into all of that. But he said he'd be willing to release it, and now it seems as if we don't want a Steele dossier type of files floating out there. But it also goes back to the entire Russia collusion hoax we were talking about at the beginning, that this seems to be what the Democrats want to try and distract from the wins of his administration. Because every time the president says, why are we talking about this? He puts out on Truth Social like 12 different posts about all of the wins he's had on the economy or with tariffs or with respect to negotiations between Israel and the Middle East, things of that nature. He's like, hey, let's get back to the things I'm winning at. Let's stop talking about this red herring and let's get back to the things that actually matter. This guy's been dead for a long time. Let's move forward in our country. I think he feels as if this is a distraction. I really really don't think there's a ton of there in the documents. And so as we move forward, and he's now given the green light for Mamdani to release the credible information and the court documents, etc., let's get the information and move on, move past it, and then we can talk about Love Island or whatever else is coming up on television. And that way we get back to what actually matters here in the country and not getting pulled away, because the Democrats are now going to try to use this to their advantage.
Yeah, but it's really not the Democrats that are doing it. Everybody is kind of like, so-called mega influencer. I don't even know what that is, to be honest with you, but they're the ones leading the charge on this. And it seems to be the only thing that they care about. Now, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying that they don't care about it. I'm sure they do. I think everybody cares about, especially children, being trafficked and abused. Everybody cares about those things.
Oh, sure.
But I guess my point on it is this. I feel like this has become something for podcasters and influencers just to talk about. And it's obviously it's enticing because it's a scandal. And, did he kill himself? And it's become kind of part of the cultural conversation over the last, especially 6-7 years. This has been something that's been a topic for podcasters and content creators to discuss. And then when it came out and it's like, there's really not some big thing here, I think a lot of them felt maybe embarrassed, or maybe they wanted something else because they've been talking about it for so long. So they wanted something else to talk about. And I'm not saying that they don't care about it. Now, don't misunderstand me for the audience that's watching. I do believe that they care about it. But for me, I would think if they care about the exploitation of children and young girls and all of this, I believe that goes on every single day in Hollywood. I think that there are probably cases that are happening right now about the 100,000 children, hundreds of thousands of children who are trafficked across the southern border that we don't really know where they ended up. So for me, I think it's more important to focus on the exploitation that's going on right now rather than this hyper fixation on the Epstein files, if it is in fact just candy for an audience. And that's where my frustration is, if that makes sense.
No, I think that's very accurate, because there was a sense of, hey, we've been led on to a certain point. And also this type of thing does get clicks. You've also seen over the last couple of years, there has been a re-emphasis on this child exploitation. I think part of it came from understanding that there was child exploitation going on at our southern border. We had the blockbuster movie come out a year or so ago, The Sound of Freedom, and that was, really ingrained in sort of our universe here. But I believe that ultimately, if there is no more information to be released on this topic, let's move forward, as you said, to the proactiveness of making sure that this is not ongoing. If we start drawing traces back and saying that, look, something that's ongoing right now had its roots that went back to this point, then I think that's a logical train of thought to follow. But if we're going to be looking in the past and trying to draw up maybe conspiracy theories or just make assumptions about what happened in the past, that detracts from the good work of trying to take this and move forward, and then continuously, draws out the oxygen and energy from the president's successes and wins. So if there's nothing there, then tell us. But the reason I think we're having a lot of conversation about it at this point is that it was teased in front of us by folks who were in the MAGA universe, by even people that were in the administration that said, hey, there might be something here. We're going to release the information, which really riled up the base. And it goes back to that old fast food commercial, where's the beef?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the same people that are furious are the people that had the binders.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
I think they're
they were gaslit too. They were walking out there with the big binder saying, we got all the information. And then when they
I don't know about you, though. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself, some people would consider me like an influencer. I don't consider myself that. I've worked for Fox News at a network, and I've always worked for networks for my entire career. I've never been somebody who just podcasts or does YouTube. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just don't consider myself that. But I guess in some way I am a political influencer, as we all are kind of political influencers when we have a platform, when we talk like this. If they would have asked me to stand on the steps with a binder, hey, Tommy, would you go stand out on the steps with an Epstein binder and take photos? I would have said, oh, hell no. No. And I'm wondering if you would have ever done that. I would have been embarrassed to do that back then, even, not even now knowing what we know, but back then I would have been embarrassed to do that.
Yeah, no, and I'll tell you why. First of all, I get 24 followers on social media, and half of them are my mom's burner accounts. But when we were in Congress back in 2018, when I was working on Capitol Hill, there was a guy that came to Capitol Hill masquerading as somebody who was like an Israeli influencer or important in the Israeli government, and sat members of Congress down in front of teleprompters and got them to read verbatim whatever he put on the teleprompter screen. And it turned out it was Sacha Baron Cohen. And he came into our congressional office and tried to get our boss to do it. And the basic standard here is that you don't read off a teleprompter before you've actually read the script and agreed to what you're supposed to go out there and say. That's the equivalent of what's happening here. If you were just handed a script and you don't read it before you go out there, then I think that that's probably not doing the due diligence on the front half on your part. And then you end up coming out on the other side saying, hey, we were gaslit and we got burned as a result of it. And then, a lot of this is these influencers, it's their total job. So how do they save face? How do they go and explain to their viewers and to the people that follow them, we didn't know what was in the binders or in the documents? I guess there was some trust there, but maybe even within our own government, we have to trust but verify.
Yeah, always. Okay, I only have you for a couple more minutes, but I do want to get to this because I think it's thrilling. Zoran Mamdani, okay? He is taking an extended vacation back to Uganda. Here's his cutesy little video, speaking of influencers, about that very thing.
Being a politician means listening, not just to your supporters, but your critics too. And some of these critics, especially on a certain website, have been giving me consistent advice. For example, at SamWhite087, Zoran, go back to Uganda, where you come from and belong. At Teflon Gone, loser, go back to Africa. There are thousands like this from across the country. I hear you. And I agree. I'm going back to Uganda. I'm headed there in a personal capacity to celebrate Rama and I's marriage with our family and friends. But I do want to apologize to the haters, because I will be coming back. And since you will undoubtedly read about this trip in the New York Post, inshallah on the front page, here are a few of my humble suggestions for headlines. MIA, Mamdani in Africa. Uganda miss me. He's completely crazy. He can't be serious. Carl Kampala-Neely investigates Mamdani. Zoe running away.
Okay, he's so gross to me on so many levels, and I don't know how people fall for this, because even if he was just an influencer, I still wouldn't listen to him or watch him because he gives me the creeps. But I think it's really weird to be in the middle of a contentious campaign. You want to be the mayor of New York City, and you're going to Africa on vacation for an extended period of time. That feels a little weird.
When I worked on a congressional campaign, we put up a sign in our office because we were ahead in the polls, but the sign said work every day like you're 20 points behind. And if you keep that mentality going all the way across the finish line, then you are going to outwork everybody else in that race. This is the tortoise and the hare right here. This is a guy that has called it quits and phoned it in. And if I'm Andrew Cuomo right now, I am campaigning my butt off. And I'm not saying I like Andrew Cuomo, but I'm also saying that this is his golden opportunity here to show that, look, this guy has gone off and gone on a vacation overseas. I'm here talking to New Yorkers. I'm on the ground. I am really working to make sure that I finish this and earn this nomination, earn this place in the city. And so, let's see what happens. Let's see if he does it. The other part of this, too, is that just the whole Mamdani thing, people keep saying this guy is an outlier. This guy's not an outlier. This is the direction of the Democrat Party. The Democrats are like 2 elections away from trying to resurrect Karl Marx and put him at the top of a ballot in the next election. I don't think that's a positive thing for the country as a whole, because if you start pulling away like that, you're going to start influencing even the moderate Democrats to make a decision in a Republican versus Democrat election, and that is not a good thing. So if they don't get some message together or some central leader, then the loudest, most wackadoodly voices in their party are going to drag that party so far to the left, they will never get another election, or they will start to influence the rest of the nation in a very, very dark direction.
What they're hoping is young, stupid people and illegal aliens, and maybe some even legal immigrants who have no allegiance to the USA. They're hoping that there are going to be enough of them to override and overwhelm the Americans and legal immigrants who love this country and love the foundations that built it. And that is the goal. I think that they're sadly mistaken, but they do want and they do envision a country where that is the majority. People who think that America is fundamentally awful and want to change it, people who have no legal right to be here, and young, stupid people who buy into whatever TikTok trend that they see on their algorithm. And it's unsettling. Let's just hope that we can stave it off long enough to save ourselves. I would certainly hope that that's the case. Thank you for spending so much time with me, Luke. I hope to have you back very soon. I really appreciate your time and much more to talk about. I'll have you back soon.
Thanks, Tommy. Appreciate it.
Thank you. WNBA players demand to be paid what they are owed, but I'm not so sure they want to go down that road. It's time for Final Thoughts. Y'all, I really didn't want to do another commentary on the WNBA, but then they went out there in these stupid shirts, and well, here I go. Those shirts one of their mothers probably pumped out on her cricket machine. Well, they're cute and all, but I'm not so sure getting paid what they are owed is the road they really want to be skipping down. With the help of Grok AI, well, the numbers don't lie. If these WNBA players were paid what they are owed or worth, well, they'd owe about $250K each. Ouch. WNBA games in 2024 averaged about 9,800 fans per game during the regular season. And yeah, that's thousands higher than 2023. But when you consider the friggin' Savannah Bananas are selling out full stadiums night after night, Also, I'd like to point out the Savannah Bananas have more Instagram followers than the entire WNBA, despite being founded in 2016. And look, honestly, good for the WNBA that it's getting more attention in the last 2 years due to two groups of people, Caitlin Clark fans and fans of watching Caitlin Clark get beat up. But you know what? I actually watched a WNBA game the other day, not by choice, but because it was playing on the ABC station at my nail salon. And if I didn't see the WNBA logo, I would have thought it was maybe high school JV. It was really that bad. But still, even though it's not my cup of tea, I hope they continue to thrive and grow, and good for them. But wearing these corny shirts and making these demands, plus the bitching and ungrateful behavior surrounding their less than desirable expansion cities, I think these gals are getting a little or a lot too big for their britches. And as a woman, I honestly find it annoying because they're playing right into the worst stereotypes of women and female athletes, that our gender is entitled and whiny and emotional and catty and demanding and needy. So thanks a lot, WNBA. Those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Catch full episodes of the show on Outkick and Fox Nation. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.